here because I witnessed the most shocking incident last night, Mike. A cyclist has completely lost control of himself, smashing in the door of a very expensive Mercedes car with the sole of his foot, accusing the driver of having cut him up or something. I don't know. The guy was completely out of control, and I have to say, it was the most shocking thing I've ever seen. It was bullying. It was aggressive. It was frightening for the people inside the car. The driver himself tried to get out to sort this fella off, and he pushed off on his bike, so they tried to chase him. And it's not the first time I've seen it happen.
It's something that you see on a regular basis. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the country, but certainly in London, I would say almost every day I see some kind of incident where there's some kind of snarling character on a bike, shouting at somebody or banging a car window or something like that.
Yeah, it's not just a kind of, well, who's right and who's wrong. I never see a motorist getting as irate with a cyclist as I see cyclists getting irate with motorists.
Right.
And by the way, we own the road, pal, you don't, is the attitude of cyclists. I mean, what's happened is, Mike, since the Green Lobby started, and cyclists now can stand up and take the moral high ground, well, we don't spew, like, fumes into the air, and, we're not using the world's resources in petrol and all that. They think they've got a God-given right to despise motorists. Well, I'm sorry, bikes don't pay any taxes,
no, they don't.
Motorists do. Motorists fund this country.
They should pay taxes.
Yeah, of course they should. Push bikes should be taxed, and they should be insured, because you're going to go around kicking people's doors in, and you get to court for a claim, and it's an expensive one, 400 or 500 quid. You should have insurance for it. I totally agree. Give us a call, please, 08717 223344, or text us on 81089, or email us via the website on talksport.net. You're listening to Talksport, and it's 7 minutes past 11. Now, Mike, you've got a rather shocking story as well. Tell me.
Yeah, well, actually, this happened to me some months ago. It might have even been sort of tail end of last year. I was out not far from Canary Wharf, actually, in East London, and I was just dropping off some stuff at the dry cleaner or something like that. Walking back out on the pavement, I was aware vaguely of a sort of, it wasn't quite a bell going off behind me, but it was a noise of somebody coming up behind me, and I sort of stopped and turned around. And as I stopped, it was a guy on a bicycle, and he was riding on the pavement, and as a result of me stopping, he then had to stop, and so he kind of slightly staggered into the road. But he didn't really stagger, he just had to put his foot down, and the bike sort of went off into the off the edge of the curb. And I just instinctively, even though it wasn't my fault, I just said, "I'm sorry about that." And he launched into this appalling sort of tirade of abuse,
foul-mouthed abuse,
really foul-mouthed abuse. And he was a South African accent, and
I know all about South African accent,
effing and blinding and all the rest of it. And I was just quite taken aback because it was quite early in the morning, and I wasn't really prepared to, get into a big row with this guy. So I was just like, well, I think I said something like, well, I said sorry, and then he mouthed something else, and he started riding off. And I thought, I'm not having this. And I shouted after him. I said, well, maybe if you were riding in the road in the first place, we wouldn't have had a problem.
That's what roads are for. Pavements are for pedestrians.
By the way, he was now cycling up a one-way street the wrong way.
They do it all the
which
time.
was not even, he thought was his jogging, right? He then stops the bike, chucks it down on the ground. He was wearing these kind of weird, those weird fingerless leather gloves. Starts taking the leather gloves off and walking towards me like, you want some of, you want some of this, and then he started abusing my mother in a terrible way.
Was your mother with you?
No, but like
how
using
did you
swear words, that kind of thing.
Shocking.
And just absolutely appalling, foul guy. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, well, I don't really want to walk away from this guy because then I'll think I was a coward. But I also, do I really want to get into a fight with this bloke in the middle of a street? It's just bonkers, and it went on, and there was a bit of a standoff for about 5 minutes, and he eventually disappeared. But he was, as you described the other guy, totally foul-mouthed, really aggressive. I mean, you think the guy was on steroids or something?
Absolutely. Look at this email here, you see. This is the sort of reaction you get from cyclists, right? And we're just trying to say, look, we can all coexist, right? Cyclists don't think we can coexist. Listen to this one here. This comes from, well, this guy has not put his name on it for obvious reasons, right? I would just like to say I fully support the cyclist actions that Mike's described, booting in the side door of that Merc. And I totally support swearing abuse at the driver. Well done to the cyclist. The amount of times I've had to punch the sides of lorries, buses and windows of cars for cutting me up whilst on my bike. You filthy car drivers are a bunch of animals, and you are a cycle fascist. And sorry, he has put a name on it. It says Errol. I bet his name's not really Errol. But that is typical of the attitude that, we have the high moral ground. Let's go to White Van Man Pete, who's an Everton fan in Lewisham. Hello, Pete.
Hello, Mike.
Yeah, hello, mate. Yeah, go on. Go on, mate.
I can tell you a thing about cyclists. If you drive down, say, the embankment about between 8 and 8:30 in the morning, they take up a whole lane.
Now, we're talking about in London here, are we?
In London. Embankment. Yeah. Well, anywhere, really. I remember seeing something on the TV, and they said, it's only a 50-50 split of cyclists that go through traffic lights. It's not a 50-50 split. It's a 90-10 split, I'll tell you. But they go down, they They go along your inside, and then there's one going on the outside, and he's going on, and he's cutting in front of you, and they're all over. They lean on the van. They never. It's very, very rare that you get one that will stop at traffic lights or pedestrian lights. I've seen pedestrians nearly knocked over.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Say, they always, you see them on the pavement, they can't get past it. I drive along the curb so they can't get inside of it. But it's not this think bike thing. It should be think van.
Yeah, of course it should.
They don't know. You can't be looking out for them all the time, Mike, when they come up on the inside.
Pete, I totally agree with you, mate. Pete, thanks very much indeed. He's absolutely right.
That's the other thing that they do, is they assume that the bus lane is actually designated for them, right? So they drive down in the middle of the bus lane. If you're actually in a cab or on a bus, it has to crawl behind these guys at 5-6 miles an hour because they won't move over.
And they weave all over the place, you know. Let's talk to Andy, who's a Manchester United fan on the M1, I think. Hello, Andy.
Hi lads, how you doing? Great show as always.
Thank you. Go on, mate. Yeah.
Just want to say I totally agree with you. These cyclists, they are a nightmare.
Yeah,
they think they've got a God-given right to be on the road, and I tell you what, you're right to tax them, Mike. I would have it as a green tax.
Yeah, I would.
Because they slow us down, and they make us emit more CO2.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. And not only that, they are responsible for putting people in hospital. Of that, I'm certain.
Exactly.
They hit people. I've seen cyclists not actually knock a child down on a pavement, but, you know, to the point where a child staggers into the road. There must have been cases where they've been responsible.
It's a complete lack of courtesy on their behalf.
Yeah.
And you're right. Tax them, get them legislated, and get them having insurance. I've no time for them.
No, I'm with you there, mate. Thanks very much
indeed. And also the point is they're so aggressive as well, because, I mean, you know, we all have to coexist, as you've said before.
Yeah.
You know, if you're driving around a major city, it is going to be congested. There are going to be times when you're supposed to let people in.
Yeah.
These guys have no manners at all,
none
whatsoever.
And I don't know where they get their, where do they get their civilised idea of behaviour from? That's what I mean, look, this one here. John on the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight's a very nice place, and I go there sometimes.
The land that time forgot, isn't it?
It is the land time forgot, but it's very pleasant. It's very, very quintessential. And it says, I bet all your callers who have a pop at cyclists are people too fat and too lazy to get on a bicycle themselves. Well, I'm not too fat and too lazy to get on a bike. Problem is, every time I buy a bike, somebody nicks it, but that's by the by. There are millions of cyclists in this country. Don't judge them all by the actions of a minority of idiots. At least cyclists don't go around killing thousands of people each year like motorists do. Well, I wouldn't be so sure about that, I'm telling you. Tax bicycles, be serious. We should be encouraging people to get off their feet, their fat, lazy backsides and get healthy instead of trying to put more obstacles in the way. No wonder the country's becoming ever more obese. Thank you. That comes
I think
from
it's a ludicrous
John
idea, by the way, to cycle to work. It's the stupidest idea you've ever heard. I mean, do you really want to sit next to a guy in an office who's coming in all sweaty, wearing that ridiculous lycra stuff?
Horrible.
Right? And then you sit there and go, what, are you going to have a shower before you sit down next to me?
Yeah, we haven't got a shower in this office.
Somebody smelly in the office?
Yeah, I think it's
disgusting.
Cycling is for cycle lanes, and the cycle lanes all over this country, I mean, they've converted,
you know what
used to be railway cuttings into, 12-mile long cycle lanes. Go cycling
Well, we're building a velodrome, right? I mean, had you ever heard of the word velodrome until relatively recently? I didn't even know what it was, right?
It was
the Commonwealth Games when they built one in Manchester, right?
That's right, yeah.
And Chris Hoy trains there, and that's where he does all this stuff.
Yeah.
But we're now going to have a velodrome. We're now going to have a velodrome in East London for the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
Why don't they all just go and cycle around that?
Well, I think that's a little bit harsh because you're cycling around in a circle.
I would ban them from the inner city.
No, Mike. Part of cycling in the country is observing nature and the trees.
That's fine. Let them cycle. Well, the country's fine.
All of that.
I'm saying in the middle of the city, they should ban them.
Totally agree. Give us a call, please. 08717 223344. Text us on 81089 or email us via the website talksport.net. So far, we've only had irate motorists calling the show. I want an irate cyclist to call the show and defend your class, because at the moment, it's indefensible. You're listening to Talksport.